Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Tuning into Tompkins Orchestra's podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rithik, and I'm joined here by
Vicky.
and our guest today is Joshua Reznicow. Joshua Reznicow is an active composer, music educator, and guest conductor for youth and honor orchestras. For over 20 years, he has taught middle school and high school students in the Linn-Mar Community School District. And under his direction, the Linn-Mar orchestras have won several awards and superior ratings at area and regional contests, as well as twice being named a Grammy Signature Music Program. He won the 2005 Texas Orchestra Directors Association Annual Composition Contest and has been commissioned and performed throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe with works for professional and young groups alike. Mr. Reznicow, welcome to the show.
Yes, welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the intro and appreciate being here and being able to speak to you guys as well as your community and your colleagues over there. Yes, thank you.
How do you know Mr. Porter? Just out of curiosity.
I don't.
Oh, did he just reach out by email for funsies?
Yeah. He just reached out, which is awesome when folks do that and they just take a risk and just had to reach out to the living composer. We're alive. We'd love to talk to people that are playing our music and making those notes come alive off the page. And he just reached out and thought he'd take a chance, and I loved it and wrote him back right away and thanked him for programming the piece, and I'd love to help out in any way I can.
He's a very brave person in general, honestly. Mr. Porter's great.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's good.
So our first question for you is, how did you first get into music? Was it something that you started when you were young, or is it something you discovered later in life?
It was pretty young. My parents, like maybe a lot of students or kiddos, they put me in piano lessons. I distinctly remember when I was very little, I was over in church and watching my mom sing in the church choir, and I would, on the edge of the pew, would take my fingers and kind of just go along the edge like I was mimicking the piano player and the organist in church. So my mother probably saw that and said, "Oh, maybe I should put him in piano lessons." And then she did. And I would sometimes practice what I was supposed to be practicing, but I did a lot of improvising, and a friend of the family taught me when I was really young how to play Heart and Soul. And so I saw that chord progression, and I just got hooked and played the 1-4-5 chord progression, and was writing, improvising little rock tunes and other kinds of pieces. And so my piano teacher would help me write some of them down. And so my first piece when I was very, very young was called Dancing Puppy. Not originals, titles I struggle with. So I wasn't an original name. I had this little dog, this little stuffed dog that would, like, if you hit this button, it would sort of bark and jump up and down and do a backflip. And so I named the piece after this little mechanical dog that I had when I was a kid. And then I wrote a second little piece that she helped me write, called Chickering. And Chickering is the name of the brand of the piano that I had in our house. Again, not an original title. It was struggling. But and then it got to the point where I was doing more and more improvising and interested in composing and writing when I was very young. And it got a little bit beyond my piano teacher's skill to help me. So then my parents were real supportive and got me into composition lessons when I was starting in sixth grade. Just naturally progressed from there. So I've been with somebody and doing formal lessons with a teacher. This was in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, where I grew up in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and worked with him for all through high school, or elementary, junior high, high school, and then, of course, then went to college for it and whatnot. So that's how I got into writing. And then I had opportunities, of course, along the way. Nobody can do this without help and opportunity. So my teachers in junior high would allow me to write for my orchestra. And that was an incredible experience. And I actually got to direct it when I was in junior high. I think it was in seventh, eighth grade, something like that. And then in high school, the same deal. I a couple of times got to direct my high school orchestra and wrote a couple pieces for them, and sort of kind of exercise those skills and those opportunities, as well as directing. I love to direct. So
We
um,
actually have a student at our school right now. His name is Eric, who composes some of our
Hmm.
pieces.
Oh, yeah. So it's the same
Yeah,
thing. Is just, you need opportunity. Everybody needs those moments just to sort of break through a little bit,
his pieces
to
are
test your
wonderful.
skills.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where it went from there, and that's how I got into it. And then then you write and you look for opportunity. I went to college for string education and composition. I was a double major, and my dream was to do three things: teach, direct, and write.
Oh wow.
And that's what I get to do each and every day. I mean, you can call it work, I suppose, but it's my life. It's what I do. So it's not really work. I mean, some days are like work. But when you got to move chairs and stands around, that's work.
That's true.
But yeah, that's what was my dream, was to be able to do all three, and so I get to do that every day. And that's just who I am. And so I love writing for school age groups and advanced school age groups and professional groups. It's incredible opportunity to do things like that. And then you have the opportunity to work with groups such as yourself. Just the last week, I was talking to you guys, and then yesterday I was doing a Zoom clinic with a group in Burbank, California. I was
Ooh.
doing a piece of mine, and I was clinicking them over Zoom. And then last week I cliniced a group in Texas on a piece that they're doing, and we did a Zoom clinic. So the music travels, and that's just, I mean, every composer, I'm sure your colleague over there writing, your fellow student there, you want to see your music played, and you get to hear it played by other folks. It's just an incredible experience. It's hard to put words to it. It's a blessing. I guess I look at it as a blessing.
Yeah, and
So
you mentioned that you started learning piano. Do you know
yeah,
any other musical instruments?
yeah. My primary instrument is viola. So upper strings viola. Obviously, as my everyday job as an orchestra director, that's my sort of my day job. So I know all the string instruments, of course, but primary is viola, and I wouldn't call myself a pianist. I could read piano just fine, but I improvise on it quite a bit. I love to improvise on it a lot. But my trade instrument would be viola.
Yeah, and
So all the violas out. Shout out to all the violas out there.
yeah, and how do you think playing piano really allowed you to get into improvisation and composition as opposed to if you had just stuck with viola? Because I know most composers online, especially, really like piano to compose.
Yeah. Well, it naturally lends itself to sort of the seeing and performing the whole score, or simply put, your right hand treble, your left hand bass. Kind of a real basic idea. So the piano naturally lends itself to the different voices, multiple voices at a time, chord structures, range. So you can do things up high, you can do things low. I would echo that. A lot of my colleagues and friends des- definitely know how to navigate the keyboard, or they are accomplished pianists. It just lends itself to it a little bit easier. It's not a prerequisite. You can obviously be a wonderful composer and writer if you're on a string instrument or a wind or brass instrument or a vocalist. But it does help to be able to navigate, again, chord structures, colors, ranges, multiple voices at one time. And we have 10 fingers. So we can sort of have 10 voices going on at once. So that's where the piano kind of comes in handy in there for writing, at least in my opinion.
Do you have any advice for people who want to start their own journey into writing music?
Yeah, it's one of those things, if you have passion for it and you love creating something from nothing. So you're staring at a blank piece of paper, or if let's say you're writing on the computer, you're staring at a blank canvas on your computer. You have to create something from nothing. It was not there, then all of a sudden it is there. And if that gets you excited, if you want that to be creative, that's step one. That's the first thing. The next piece would be to not be afraid to let it take time. Creating something from nothing takes a lot of time and energy, and allow it to. It's not an immediate entity, especially in this day and age where we love everything really quick and fast. It's not always like that when you're creating something, and when you're composing, it's not always that. So I'd invite young folks to be okay with it taking some time. And allow the process to kind of unfold. I would advise them to be persistent. Don't be afraid to sit in a room by yourself for hours and work on what you're doing. And then likewise, come out of your room and share it with people. Let people sort of hear it and get their advice, get their thoughts. Don't be afraid of them giving you their opinion. Most composers, and we're all like this, we're a little insecure. So we sometimes don't want to share things right away because we're afraid of the negative, if you will, or the critique. But that's part of the process. And it takes a lot of bravery to do that, but I would encourage people to do that. So to get started, don't be afraid to be creative. And then when you have that idea in your head, try to get it down on paper or on the computer. And then from there, don't be afraid to be persistent. And then also to show other people on that and take that risk in there. So I guess that's the best way to sort of start the process.
It's like when you write a book, you have to just start with a blank page. Even with art, everything starts with nothing.
100%. I guess I could piggyback on some of the comments too. Don't be afraid to listen to specifically with writing music. Listen to other composers, other pieces of music that inspire you, because that'll help you through some of those moments where you have writer's block or you're feeling kind of tired or you're feeling like it's not going anywhere. Listening to other pieces of music, whether it's the same type of music you're trying to write or not, can really inspire a person. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be the same type of music. For me, when I'm writing and sitting down, I like to listen to other ideas and just to help generate those creative juices, get them going, and really kind of help inspire me in there. Because we're all kind of go through that where you're writing and it's not going anywhere and you're kind of struggling. It's good to continue to listen to other people and other composers, whether they're new or if it's been around for 400 years. Either way, it's a healthy process.
Are there any particular pieces or composers that like really inspire you?
I mean, yeah, it's always a popular question. I always give a terrible answer to that question. If you were asking me like right now, it changes over time. When I was your age, high school age, I loved John Williams, of course. I still love John Williams.
Classic.
The movie music is amazing. When I was your guys' age, I was really into Danny Elfman.
I love Danny Elfman. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's great. Original Batman score was like I binge listened to that score over and over and over and over and over again, and I loved him so much I wrote a term paper on him when I was in high school. I just fell in love with Danny Elfman and his writing, and actually just a few years ago, and now I'm in my late 40s, but just a few years ago, I got to conduct some of the Batman suite here with my group here, and I was kind of like a kid again. It was just, I was just having such a moment with my guys doing that piece. But I love film music. I love the classics, of course. I love the romanticized music. So your Beethovens and your Tchaikovskys. I love Shostakovich. When I was in college, I fell in love with Stravinsky. I fell in love with minimalism and John Adams. And then when I was also, I loved pop music. And when I was in college, I was big into Dave Matthews Band and Guns N' Roses and Metallica and the Chili Peppers, and still love all that stuff. Still listen to it all. And then there's a couple bands I'm listening to now that I'm just getting into, in addition to art music and sort of the traditional and some of the new. So it's a terrible answer to your simple question.
No, I really struggle with those kind of questions too.
Yeah, I love it all. I try to listen to as much as I can, but my tastes have changed over the time, and yeah, I don't have a particular person that I'm listening to. I mean, I guess if there was a band right now, there's a band called Need to Breathe. They're kind of a southern rock kind of group. My wife and I love them. Of course, Dave Matthews Band and OAR. I like them. But in terms of just that's sort of my music that I listen to that kind of just turns my brain off a little bit and just have fun with it. I don't need to feel the need to study it. I don't feel it. But I do listen to a lot of film music, some of the modern film composers. I try to pay attention to them, the scores when I'm watching a movie or a TV show. There's some really interesting stuff that's out there. So I do pay attention to that. I do forget their names, the composers' names a lot, but I do pay attention to what's sort of happening in the modern ways. There's a lot of good stuff out there, a lot of good stuff. So that's all right. That's a bad answer to your really simple question.
You mentioned that you like everything, but I'm gonna try to narrow it down anyway. Do you have a favorite style of music to listen to, perhaps?
If it's just for fun, like I don't really want to have to think about what I'm listening to, because you guys are musicians. When you're hearing something, your brain automatically goes into analysis mode. So if I'm just like kind of mentioned those bands that Need to Breathe and Dave Matthews and OAR and some of that stuff. If I want to like sort of in my studies and looking for scores, Stravinsky, Shostakovich, Beethoven. Beethoven's my hero. Beethoven struggled to write, and music, a lot of it is just it's genius. I mean, not all of it. I actually did find some bad Beethoven, but yeah, believe it or not, I did one piece a couple years ago. It's terrible. It was a horrible piece of music, and some of my colleagues and I were making fun of it. But,
why don't you like it?
It was just bad writing. It was he probably was writing it, and he was under a deadline, and he had to get it real quick, and he just threw it together. Is my guess. What was that called? It was. Oh, I forgot the title. I'll have to look it up. It's not very good. But then you compare it to the symphonies. Beethoven 5 is genius. And Beethoven 7. I love Beethoven 7. It's so much fun to direct, so much fun to play, so much fun to listen to. I love Shostakovich. I mean, Festive Overture, Shosti 5, some of the symphonies. It's just, how do you not like it, Copland, great stuff. Gershwin. I mean, how do you not love Gershwin? Just combining some of these incredible colors and orchestrational style. So I enjoy listening to them, and I enjoy analyzing it while I'm listening to it as well, either as a director or as a writer. So I kind of narrowed it down for you a little bit.
Do you have a favorite piece that you yourself have composed?
That I've composed?
Yes. Maybe a top 5.
They're all my babies, but no, yeah, I get it. I wrote a piece several years ago called American Sketches. It's gotten a lot of play. It's one of my favorites. The one you guys do in Wrath of Gods is one of my favorites. I've directed it here many times. And I have a brand new one out called Ghosts of Bohemia. It was one of those pieces that just clicked. I wrote it about a year ago, and I'm really excited about this piece. It's doing really well. It just came out. It was premiered last year, but it just came out for publication about 2 months ago. So I'm really excited about that piece, and I really love it. Darkened Shadows I wrote. That one's a lot of fun. Has a really unique colors. And another piece I wrote, it's based off a string quartet that I wrote called Dat Groove. It doesn't get a lot of play, but it's really fun. And if you add a bunch of the percussion stuff and improvise, so the improvisatory nature of the piece, it's a lot of fun to put together. So I would say those come to the top of my list. But they're all my babies.
Is it like asking you to pick a favorite child?
Yes. I mean, it's like I couldn't do that. I have two kiddos myself, and I couldn't pick between the two.
They're all the favorites.
So, yeah, they're all of them. But you can kind of look at them and go, well, this one just kind of clicked a little bit better than this other one. So that'll happen. That'll happen. And we've all of us composers, or like you were talking about writing papers or creating art, we all create something that's not our best, and they just go into a drawer somewhere. Never see the light of day. That's part of the process.
In your compositions, do you have like any kind of like a compositional signature? Like when you were composing, you just like some idea that you always came back to?
Yeah, we all do. We all have our quote sound. You hear a Mozart piece and it sounds like Mozart or Beethoven or John Williams or whatnot. There's some orchestrational colors and rhythms or rhythmic language that I like to use, that I found is very accessible to play, It's fun. It's not hard, or it's really useful in the ensemble, or works with string orchestras. So some of those colors are, okay, for as an example, the basses. I love writing good bass parts, and I hate the basses sitting there doing nothing. Same with the violas. I always watch out for my violas. I mean, a shout out to the violas out there. In the bass part, I like to have, especially recently, arco and pits at the same time.
Ooh.
It's a really unique color, and it can, you get the thickness of the arco, but you get the pointillistic nature of the pits, and you can have, why not have them at the same time? I don't know why more people don't use it, but I think it's a great color. I think it's a really useful color. As one example, I like to use like double 16th notes, so like sorry, double eighth notes, turns to 16ths, to kind of run up a scale. It's not hard, and it adds a lot of color and adds a lot of sort of action going on there. I use certain 16th passages that are not hard on the string instrument, but they're to an audience perspective. It sounds interesting and almost hard, but it's actually not. Off the string spiccato. You get a lot of that in my writing. Pretty modern. I mean, a lot of modern composers are using it these days. But you guys are uh, in Wrath of Gods. Could you agree that that's all over the place?
Yeah, just a bit. But one
um,
thing we noticed in a lot of your pieces was that it really alternates between 6/8 and 4/4, which was a really interesting decision. And it's really creative, and it seems like it works really well.
yeah, I naturally rhythmically like. I think bar lines get in your way, so I like to do things by accents. But we have to put bar lines in the Western music. So if you, I just base everything on grooves and accents, and so then I find where the bar lines make sense. And so, like you're saying, 6/8 4/4, there's a groove right there. And if you let go of the bar line and you just go with the 6/8 plus the 4/4, the accent, then it plays better. Just sort of ignore the bar line because you don't need the bar line's just there because it kind of has to be. I utilize that a lot in my writing. I have been of late breaking away from that consciously and exploring other things, but then I come back to it. There's a piece that released this year that it goes back and forth between 6/8 and 4/4, and then some of my other stuff is just sort of doesn't alternate too much. It also depends on who you're writing for too. Some groups don't want that, so if they want something a little bit more traditional, then I write the music in that style. But those are some of the colors that I use in there. I love to, I mean, this is an easy one, but I love to double the violas and the cellos. That's a beautiful sound. It's a really great soli sound. Oh, and one other thing. I love to use string effects if I can. I don't know why composers don't use that more often. Your harmonics, glisses, tremolos, the portamentos, you can do all these beautiful string sound effects, and they're not hard, and people just don't write for them much, and I think they're awesome. I try to put that in, not every piece, but I use them when I need to.
Another thing we
Go ahead.
noticed was, I think it was Jubilant Overture and Wrath of the Gods. Both of those have like small instances where it's going fine, and then the orchestra just drops out and it's a solo. How do you think a solo really contributes to the effect of a piece as opposed to just pushing through with it with the orchestra?
Yeah, great question. The straightforward answer to that is, again, it depends on the nature of the piece or who I'm writing for. But let's look at it from a couple of different lenses. The first lens, or the first or perspective, is a school group. So let's say I'm writing for a school group. And if you look around everybody's orchestra, every group, there's lots of wonderful players, but there's always some players that can play exceptionally well. And it's good to sometimes give them an opportunity to kind of shine. So I love the opportunity to give those players some opportunity to get a little bit of a moment of, yeah, I've been practicing a lot, I've been doing a lot of hard work. Here's a little moment for me on there. And from the teacher's perspective, it's nice to be able to give that opportunity. From the parent perspective, it's nice to see my kiddo playing that moment, or like a quartet playing. So you're kind of utilizing multiple soloists in there. That's one perspective or one position to look at. Now let's look at it from the other side. Let's look at it from the artistic view. The artistic view, or the score view, is it's nice to give the audience a break, an auditory break from the huge wall of sound of strings. and you bring the texture. The texture is the voices, how many voices you have at one time. You bring the texture down. You bring it down to a little bit more of a thinner texture. Well, that's interesting. It gives the ear a little bit of a break. And then if you're clever, you kind of sweep in or bring it back. And the playing with the textures is what I always find very interesting. I get annoyed when I listen to some pop music. You have a groove, and they set up a groove, and then they set up some cool textures. But the problem is they don't have a break from it, and so I get bored. I would like to hear something different. Take me as a listener somewhere else, and then bring me back. That's the unique thing about utilizing soloists in there, and you can do that with a string orchestra. Also, with the string orchestra, in comparison to like a full orchestra has a lot of different colors to choose from with regards to the winds, the brass, percussion, the string choirs, all of those. In the string orchestra, you have kind of this one string sort of texture, but if you're clever, you can start seeing the different colors within there. And then if you take those colors and you kind of show the audience this color, this one, it's a small color, it's a big one, it's back to small, it's kind of medium. It keeps the piece interesting, at least from my silly little perspective. So when I set up those solos, I am setting them up from two different perspectives. One from the teacher and the parent side. I'm a parent, so I get it. And from the listener side, the artistic side of things. That's generally why I choose to put solos in the music.
We were wondering what inspired you to write The Wrath of the Gods, which we are performing at the Midwest Clinic.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait. You guys, I can't wait to hear it. I'll try to give you the quick short story because the piece has been around forever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if your teacher showed you guys the program notes, but this piece was originally a four-hands piano piece that I wrote back in college. And what you guys are playing was a pretty big motive from that piece, but it wasn't the piece. The four-hands piano piece that I wrote back when I was an undergrad in college was this 25-minute long behemoth of a piece of music that was way too long. It wasn't that good of a piece of music. I remember one of my professors getting done listening to it at the premiere, and he goes, "Woo, you never give me a time to breathe." Because it was like 25 minutes of these two my classmates playing this four-hands piano piece that just went on forever, and it was just loud all the time. I recognized after it was done and listened to his comments, like, yeah, you're right. The piece itself was not very good, but there was good ideas inside the piece. So a few years later, once I was teaching over at our middle school here, I know this was like 26 years ago is when I started teaching. There was some good writing going on, but there was also a lot of really bad writing going on. And so I just started writing more and more for my own. There's a lot of great writing now, but back then it wasn't as good. It was hard to get, and there was there was good stuff, but there was some bad stuff, especially with the violas. Poor violas had nothing to do. So I wrote for my group, and I was exploring what would be work for them, what they would like to play. And I remembered this four-hands piano piece, and it had some really cool grooves in it. It was also dark, and it had some minor, and had some good energy. I'm like, I think my middle schoolers would like this. I'm going to explore this and play with this a little bit. And so then I took the main ideas that you hear in Wrath of Gods out of that piano piece, and then scored it for a string orchestra. And it did okay. It did pretty good. And then I actually eventually fleshed out even more with a full orchestra piece that I did as a part of a commission, because I had this kind of working string sketch. And they're like, well, I want to explore this more. I want to do more with this piece. There's good ideas, but it's not perfect yet, but there's some good ideas in there. And then I scored it out for this full orchestra version of it. Actually, then now called The Wrath of Gods. I had a different title back many years ago. And then from the full orchestra, like, okay, this is working. I like it. It's a much better composition now. But I want to also score it out for a string orchestra to play it, because there's more string orchestras. There's not that many full orchestras out there in the publishing world. I then rescored it and published it as a string orchestra piece, which I've done with my guys here several times as well. So sorry, that's a long history of that, but that composers do that. That happens. Sometimes pieces take a long time to evolve, and they evolve from one idea to another, to another, to another, and they have a long history. Some don't. Some pieces are just there. It is, and it's ready to go. But this was kind of a working sketch for a long time, and I'm finally so happy that it's not a working sketch anymore. It's a piece, and it's being shared and it's being performed by other groups out there. I'm really excited by that.
Yeah, you mentioned how some of them it's just there it is, and some of them they take a bit more time. That's something I've noticed quite a bit in like classical music. Like some of the later Bach suites, they seem like really like dreary, and it's just one emotion all the way through, and it's really well written. And I love the pieces. But then there's some other ones like Shostakovich Five Fourth Movement, which we played for our full orchestra last year, and it was
Hmm.
there's the part at the very end where it's a bunch of repeated A's, and it seems like it's happy and it's forced, and it just really makes you think about what he really wanted. And how do you think that really contributes to the effect that you want to get in a piece?
Like you're talking about the end of Shasti where it just keeps you like the strings just have that
Yeah.
constant at the end. Like you're wondering how does that work within the piece of music?
Well, how does it work when you're trying to approach a particular message or a particular thing that you want to get out? Do you prefer to go for the really direct, like Bach sort of route, or do you prefer to go for the Shostakovich, where you kind of make it a bit complex and make your listener think a bit?
The simple answer to that is that for me as a writer, it just depends on what the piece needs. So this is going to seem silly to you guys, but once the piece is a little bit past sketch mode, I look at it as if it's its own little like it's alive. And it's then gonna sort of talk to me. I play it, I listen to it, I listen to it, I listen to it, and it tells me where to go next. So I don't know, haven't gotten a chance to text Shasti yet about how he wrote the end of five there, but I can. And I haven't read up on any history on this, but if looking at the way the score is set up, and I've directed that last movement a couple of times, I mean, it's the end of a full symphony. It's a tiny little codetta from an entire symphony, right? So it needs this huge for his in his ear, this huge, big, bombastic ending. And the ending is rather simple. And you can imagine him just sitting on a piano, just banging out a bunch of these A's, right? You were talking about the A's on there.
Yeah.
And then the brass are just like, here I am. Here it is. And I remember doing it with my guys a couple of times. It's like, okay, all right, strings. I think, and remember, if memory serves me, there percussion. We're just going to keep hitting this, and it's going to be kind of dull for you. And I'm going to brass. I'm going to work with you a little bit, but I'm going to try not to kill your chops. We can only do this a couple of times before the chops start wearing down, and that's from a teaching perspective. But what it feels like what he's doing at that moment is just simply rounding out a very big composition. It's just the last little sentence of a very big piece. And I will do the same thing for mine. My endings have to make sense for the whole piece. They have to make sense. How does it tie into the whole work? Does it speak to the work? Does it make sense? Is it balanced? I find that writing an ending is very difficult. If you think about a lot of the music that you guys play, and if you think about a lot of the music that you guys play, especially when you're younger, you have a really cool opening, you have a nice middle, and then do you feel like the ending is a little bit slapped together or kind of just put in? And I think sometimes people forget to write a good ending. Endings, in my humble opinion, are very difficult to put together. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out a very good, balanced ending that serves the piece, that's interesting to the audience, and of course, interesting and or fun to play for the player. But that's a little bit of what's going on, at least from my perspective, and I would guess from, Shostakovich's perspective. That's a great ending. It's tiresome to play, but it's a great ending. But one of the greatest endings, in my humble opinion, in the Western lit is if you guys you probably have Beethoven's the Egmont Overture. That's a great ending. I mean, he just knocked that one out. That one, Shostakovich Festive Overture is a great ending. Tchaikovsky March Slav. man, that's a classic ending, I suppose. But that's a when you know that piece ends. When that piece ends, you know it's done.
Yeah.
We I love directing that one. And it's just a lot of fun. I listen to the piece of music and then I imagine what's going to be next and work on it and work on it and come back, revise it, work on it, and make sure it balances well. Yeah, it's kind of my thoughts on it anyway.
So we have one final question for you, and it's a
Sure.
less related to the composing. What are your hobbies outside of composing? Do you have anything you do when you're really like blocked with a piece and you just need to think about something else for a few minutes?
Yeah. Hopefully most people do. But absolutely. I'm a huge sports fan. I love college football and basketball, and I love the NFL. I'm from Minnesota, so I follow my Minnesota teams. I'm a die-hard baseball fan, die-hard Minnesota Twins baseball fan. For the baseball fans out there, I got a chance when I was a kid to go with my dad to the 1991 playoffs and World Series. I was there. That may or may not mean anything to you guys, but some baseball fans out there, that'll mean great because that was one of the greatest World Series ever played. And I was there. I was young, but I distinctly remember it. So big. I'm a sports fan. I learn a lot from sports business, watching what they do to help run the business over here of our public school orchestra. Outside of that, I love gardening and landscaping. So we all need a break from things, and as you know, your teacher's probably around people and students a lot. Same with myself. My gardening and landscaping is like my time, is my sort of peace time, if you will. So it's just me. I've built a big pond, like a 15-foot by 25-foot pond. I got four waterfalls. I got fish, thousands of plants around. My grass has got to be perfect. I plant many trees. I do a little bit of a vegetable garden, but it's mostly like plants and flowers and trees. And in the summer, I tend it. My neighbors know because they see my yard and it's like perfect. It has to be perfect. I just love playing in the garden. It's just sort of my, um, yeah, it's just my time. So sports, baseball, and gardening and landscaping is my non-music time. It's what I love to do. Of course, I love spending time with my family. But you're asking some of my hobbies, so those are my hobbies. But I am able to combine some of my hobbies with my family. My stepdad and I do a lot of gardening together, and my daughter and my son and I, we've done a lot of music and stuff together. And my wife gets to enjoy all that as well. So my wife and I like to do a little traveling and to hang out. So, but those are my direct hobbies on that.
So we're just about finishing up now. It's been
Yeah.
going on for a while now, and it's great to talk to you, Mr. Reznicow.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and I can't wait to hear it. I'll try to stay in contact with your director if you guys need anything.
Follow up interview after
Along,
Midwest.
yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, it'd be cool to do that. If you want to, just let me know. If you guys have a rehearsal, I'd love to chime in. It'd be awesome.
We have a rehearsal there. I think we're gonna see a couple of the other orchestras performing at the Midwest, but I don't think there's a lot more to it than that. But if we could see you there or something, that would be amazing.
Yeah. What are you playing? What are you guys playing?
Oh, we're playing Wrath of the Gods, obviously, and
Yeah.
we're playing a lot of tunes. But the big one that we're playing is Rainbow Body by Theophantus.
Okay, cool.
It's a really cool piece.
And is this you guys string orchestras all the way through, or full, or
Yeah, we qualified with full orchestra. So there's a couple of string pieces here, and I think there's one or two with chorale as well. And most of
oh,
them are
okay,
full orchestra.
well, full orchestra.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear it, and I've been going to this conference for a long time, so it's always a huge honor to get. I don't know if you guys are aware, but it's a big honor to have a piece played there. So, thank you, thank you for picking the piece, and I cannot wait to hear it in a few weeks, actually, a couple months.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah.